Hi. What's up? How's it going? What you doing? What you got there? What are you eating? Um, it's been a little while. I thought I'd say hello. Hello. It's hot. I'm sweating. I'm a big sweaty nerd is what I am. Um, so I was watching Scott Costin Bromstar today while he was playing in the background at work while I was doing stuff. And he was talking about box sets, and we were talking a little bit about music, and it just got me thinking that I haven't really, hey, special person, how are you? Um, got me thinking that I haven't, over the past month and a half, I've got actually one or two records, quite a few records in the mail, and I found a couple around town. Again, I've been selling on Discogs, and it's hard when you sell stuff, you get all this money, and it sits in a PayPal account. And then you start browsing through Discogs and you go, huh, that's interesting. And you keep adding things to your want list. And then every once in a while, a seller comes along, especially Canadian sellers, which has happened to me. There's been a couple of overseas and a couple of states, but mostly from Canada. The shipping is fantastic and they have a number of items that I want. So I end up ordering a couple of things from one individual. Got a couple of things still coming in the mail, actually. Um, so I thought we'd talk music for a bit, and I'm not going to save it for last. We're going to do this one first because this one might get some comic people excited, and I'm hoping that it turns out to be one of the stills that this grabs. I picked up this today. Tan 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 tan. Spider Jazz KPM cues used in the amazing animated series that we are not allowed to mention by name for legal reasons. About to head out to dinner with my partner, but wanted to catch the top of the stream. Right on, special person. Spend time with your loved ones. That's fine, because I'll be here, and then it'll be, you can watch it later. KPM Music Library is the best. It is true. So, those of you who know about this cartoon, it's from, first of all, this was released by the amazing Trunk Records out of the UK. And Johnny Trunk, if you, I don't know, check out Trunk Records, seriously. He's released a lot of fantastic stuff. So this, one of my local record shops ordered it in for me. There was a colored vinyl version. I didn't get that. I just got the basic black version. It doesn't come with a download card, unfortunately, to get it digitally. So library music is a bit of a thing. KPM is one of those companies that the KPM Music Library. There's like DeWolf. There's a bunch. I actually should have pulled it out. I have a great book on library music record covers, and it actually comes with a really great CD as well. I was always aware of library music, and honestly, as he kind of states on the back, through this animated series that we can't mention by name, I allowed to mention for legal reasons, mainly from the Spider-Man cartoon. That's where I was introduced to a lot of this music, because even at a young age, I mean, that music just really resonated. There was something just amazing about it. So this record covers music that was used in the second and third seasons, nothing from the first season. In the first season, it was a lot of music by Bob Harris and Ray Ellis. But he says on the back here, those cues and master tapes are now believed to be lost. Mind the comics. Hey, G, what up? All those tapes are lost. There was a local Winnipeg band called the Volume, the Amazing Spider Band, and I believe they actually got in touch with Ray Ellis, if I'm not mistaken. We're just talking about this, G. I just got this today. Music from the original Spider-Man cartoon. I believe they got in touch with Ray Ellis, and they recorded a CD. I've got it somewhere. Where they reproduced a lot of the original Spider-Man music and a lot of the stuff that is known and loved and instantly recognizable. So the KPM and just library music in general, I wasn't that deep of a digger. Intrigued by, I'll catch the rest later. Love digging for vinyl. Take care. Right on, special person. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good dinner. I was always aware of library music, and I wasn't that hardcore of a digger when it came to records. So when I did find them, they were usually pretty pricey, but I didn't find them too often. I know that if you were a hardcore record digger, you could find in the depths of basements and old buildings and the CBC library and that sort of thing, you could find some of these records. But what I was a part of many, many years ago, and he mentions it on the back of the cover here, surprisingly, there was a Yahoo group called Spidey Jazz, and I was a part of that. And that whole group, the goal of that group was to dig through library music and find cues that were used in the cartoon and then upload kind of a master list. Now, by the time I joined, most of the list was complete, but that was kind of in the height of my digging through SoulSeek, which was it is a peer-to-peer music sharing platform. So I was downloading a lot of library music compilations throughout that time and kind of digging through them on my own, just because I wanted to do that exact thing, find some of the music from Spider-Man, and then stumbled onto this group and saw that, hey, they had a list of artists and the songs and actually what album each of the tracks came from. So that made it much easier to find the tracks. So I ended up just putting together a compilation CDR for myself that I would play in the car and play for friends and stuff. And I burnt for a couple of people. It was a great, really great group. And at the time, I think it was just before the original DVD box set came out, because I remember there being talk of, wouldn't it be great if with the box set they put out a CD soundtrack with a bunch of the cues. I'm not sure when it comes to licensing music, especially library music at this time. Obviously it can be done because he did it for this vinyl, for this record. At that time, I don't know how easy it was, or if it was something they even thought of, because eventually the box set came out and it was just the cartoons. So this gives you a taste of it anyway, and it's very kind of it's jazzy for sure. But I mean, the music on that show was just classic. I don't know if that's focusing. It doesn't quite look like it's focusing. Hoping that you can see some of the names on there, but maybe not. Oh, there we go. Boom. There we go. If you want to pause it there, you can read some of those names when you're rewatching. It's just great that somebody has finally put together an album of a bunch of the cues. I just finished listening to side one when I got home. It's not a ton of stuff that I recognize instantly. Sorry, I should correct myself. I recognize it. It's not a lot of the stuff that's kind of instantly recognizable. I mean, there's some cues from that show that you could play 3 seconds of, and people would know exactly what it was that you were playing. That said, still great. Definitely check out Trunk Records if you're a movie fan, if you're a music fan. He does a lot of, I think he put out the Wicker Man soundtrack, and he's done a bunch of kind of weird electronic music and stuff like that, and all kind of in that vein of jazz, library music, soundtrack, electronic, that sort of area. Really, really great. So very excited that I got that. That's the story there. And just to kind of talk you through some of the other stuff, a record label, Stomachache Records, that I was familiar with, but never really had a lot through kind of, I think I've mentioned it before, through digging on Discogs. One of the greatest things about it is following links of people. So you find an artist that you really like, or a band that you really like. On the Discogs page, it breaks it down, who the members of the bands are, and all of those are hyperlinks too. So then you can go to a page, if one exists, for each individual member, and it'll talk about, then it'll have links to other bands that they were part of, and if they had a record label, what that record label was, and what that record label released. So when you start digging through Discogs, it can become a really fun trip of digging back through time to see where some of your favorite artists or bands started with. And a lot of the music that I'm into that really resonates is kind of really focused down. It's a lot of the same names that keep popping up, and some of their same record labels like Stomachache, Bulb Records, that sort of thing. Seems to be a rotating cast for me that always pops up. So this is Bullets Wrapped in Sugar, and it's just a 7-inch EP with some bands on it. One specifically, I collect Amarillo Records. Greg Turkington, who kind of is also the comedian Neil Hamburger. He's done some bands like the Faxed Head. He had a record label, Amarillo Records, and I've got most of the stuff. There's a couple of things that are a little harder to find. There's an Anton LaVey record from the Church of Satan that usually goes for pretty big bucks, so I've never pulled the trigger on that one, but I have most of everything else. And as I was kind of going through the digging, one of the bands that he was associated with was called the Easygoings, and the Easygoings appear on this compilation, including, along with the Easygoings, Yamatsuka Ai from the Boredoms, Lee Ronaldo from Sonic Youth, the Dead Sea Gate, Mr. Freeman's Pink Underwear, and the Merchants of the New Bazaar. So some of the acts I'm not familiar with at all, and others I am. It's a fun little 7-inch. One of the things I'm enjoying doing, the other part of the title of this is Dead Air, which is my radio show that I have weekly on the University of Manitoba station, 101.5 UMFM. One thing I'm really enjoying doing on that show is kind of doing mixtapes live, just playing a bunch of different music live, and it almost becomes kind of a grab bag of, I don't stick with one genre. I try to mix it up so you hear all different styles of music. I just finished this the other day, actually, that I'm hoping to make into a shirt. It's in 2 pieces, but some of you have probably seen it on some of my feeds. They do once a year, like most college and community campus radio, they'll do kind of a pledge drive where they ask the listeners to donate some money. And I'm trying to get it done so I can have some shirts to offer from my show that if you donate, I haven't decided exactly the dollar amount. It all depends on how much I can get these shirts. Obviously, I don't get the money, but I want to kind of make it on par. I'm thinking around if you donate $25 or more, you'll get a Dead Air t-shirt while they last, kind of thing. My mind is talking about a million different things. So part of the fun of having this radio show is that, again, it's the way that I collect records. It's the way that I collect music. It's the way that I collect comics. I like the idea of dipping my toes into a bunch of different genres and finding things that are unusual. So I like the idea of presenting a radio show where you're going to hear some stuff that maybe you're familiar with, but you're also going to hear some things that are a little bizarre, hopefully, and a little bit out of your comfort zone, and maybe a little bit trying at times. And it's enjoyable. It's a really good hour to spend. So that's the story behind that one. I am into some grime and some of that kind of style of electronic music and rap, basically. So in the UK, their grime scene has guys like Wiley, Dizzy Rascal, Trim, Flodan, etc., a bunch of guys. So this is a guy named Swindle with Mungo's Hi-Fi and Flodan, and I heard this track Global Dance, and if you search it up on YouTube, I love the song. So I found this, it's just a single, so just 2 songs from the UK. I found it in the UK, a seller in the UK, and couldn't resist. It did cost a couple of dollars to ship it from the UK, but it was worth it. It's a really great song. The Mad Ting song featuring Jamie is just okay. This single is about the track Global Dance. Give it a listen. What else do I got here? I don't know if I've shown this one before. One of my favorite kind of stoner rock or metal bands of all time has been Sleep, and they're infamous for their last record before they broke up was called Jerusalem. Its real name was Dope Smoker. It was one song, about an hour long. It kind of broke the band. They were signed to kind of a major label. They used a lot of the money to buy gear and weed. Um, they had this epic recording station, or a recording session rather, and when they finished the album, the label was kind of pissed off because they wanted a single, something that they could play on the radio, and these guys gave them an album that's one song an hour long. There was really nothing they could do, so they kind of handed it over to different uh, engineers and people to kind of mix it. um, Eventually the album came out as close to as what Sleep had intended. They kind of got their hands on it again after many years and released a version that they were happy with, but it was such a stressful event that it kind of broke the band up. Al, the singer slash bass player, he didn't play music for a little while. Matt Pike went on to form High on Fire. Eventually they all got back together. Sleep got back together and they started performing again. And this year, um, Third Man Records, almost blanked on the name, Jack White's record label, uh, helped them with their brand new album called The Sciences. And I think this is a second or third printing of it. The first printing of it apparently was the best-selling Third Man Records release since they went into business. I just pre-ordered Sleeper doing another one for Third Man. It's just one song, 17 minutes, and the flip side is an etching on the record as well. I just pre-ordered that one. Uh, so this is kind of their epic return, the double LP, and the inside with everything a good stoner would want. A nice breakfast, but if you look in the toast, you can see Tony Iommi's face. If you look on the milk carton, you can see, I believe it's Geezer Butler missing. So yeah, pretty fantastic stuff. Really, really amazing album. They still have it. Some fantastic tunes on here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 songs on it. Sonic Titan, which takes up the entirety of side 2 on the first LP, was the final side on, I think it was a live version, the final side on one of the Dope Smoker versions that came out. Been digging into more electronic and noise and synthesizer type of music, and one of the guys who I'd heard some stuff of years ago, Cotton Museum, his name is Chris Pottinger. I found somebody who had a couple of his records, and then a friend of mine locally was selling another one for $10, and it's fantastic. My last week's, or this past Tuesday's Dead Air, I played these 3 records, just one side off of each of these records, and it's amazing, amazing stuff. So this is Chris Pottinger's. This is his newest one from 2017. It's called Stagnant Secretion, but his art style is right up my alley. Lots of kind of oozing and bubbling and dripping kind of creatures. And this art for this album specifically goes incredibly well with the quote unquote music that's on here. Really kind of sets a tone. This is more along the horror movie soundtrack line, this album here. Phenomenal album from beginning to end. If there was one album of this guy that I would recommend, it would be this one. Unbelievable stuff. Really, really impressive. And then the other Cotton Museum, this one is Hatching Extraction, and I think it's from 2012. So these are all from his own record label called Tasty Soil, where he releases, every once in a while, he'll have a limited run of t-shirts, tote bags, art prints, that sort of thing. But then he also has some records. Actually, he did a split with Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth as well on his Tasty Soil record label. So that's that cover, and there's the back of that. Just a very, very unique art style that really resonates with me, and I think matches the music beautifully. And finally, this one I got from the guy in town. It's called Pustules, from a friend of mine in town here who sells records. He had this copy left, so I grabbed it. And this one has the bonus of it's just a single-sided LP, and on the flip side is an etching as well. So I'll just kind of show you that. We'll see if it shows on the screen. Oh yeah, there you go. So there you go. Amazing, amazing stuff. This album itself is pretty great as well. It's probably my least favorite of the three, but it's still great stuff. So there you go. And there's the back cover to that one too. This one he screen printed himself. Most of them come out in limited editions, and I'm surprised because the price was pretty. Yeah, this one was limited to 400 copies. His prices are amazing. The one thing I did notice, I wanted to order a couple of the albums right from his website, but whoever he ships with, the shipping to get it to Canada was so excessive that for, I think, 2 LPs and an art book, I think it was going to cost me around $90 Canadian. When I found the 2 records on Discogs, it was, including shipping, it was half of that. I think it cost me around $35 to $40 Canadian to get 2 records. So it was, as much as I wanted to support him right from Tasty Soil, unfortunately, those shipping prices just make it, yeah, it's just too much for me. Along the electronic music line, the same guy that sold me that Cotton Museum 12-inch here in town had this, the Happy Moog, starring the Moog synthesizer, the electronic super wonder of the world. Some of these kind of albums can be hit or miss. This one is an absolute hit. Really great. There is a couple, actually not on this one. I don't think there's any covers on this one. We have tracks like March of the Martians, Re-Entry to the Moon, Blast Off Country Style, Saturn Ski Jump, In a Happy Moog, and Short Circuit, among others. Really, really great. I mean, at the time the Moog synthesizer was coming out and people were getting it in their hands, especially people who could afford them at the time, there was a lot of people doing a lot of kind of classical interpretations, or electronic interpretations of classical music, rather, is what I'm trying to say. And then there was people that were doing kind of pop and rock related music just on the Moog synthesizer. I find them really entertaining to listen to. That one is really great. The copper-plated integrated circuit, plugged-in pop, presented on the Moog synthesizer and other electronic instruments by Sear Electronic Music Productions. So there's that one there. This one I found locally as well, too, at a used record store. Oh, Cost Brom Store, Scott. I was just speaking about you at the beginning. You yourself, you, I'm talking to you. You influenced this video. When I was watching this morning, it made me think of all the records I've bought lately that I haven't really talked about on my channel. So I'm just going through them. I'm about halfway through the stack. So I'm glad to see you. That's great that you're here. Just talking about some Moog synthesizer and electronic type of albums right now. So again, I think this one, yeah, this one has Hey Jude by Lennon McCarthy. What else? Yeah, Revolution as well. Where Have All the Flowers Gone? Really, really great, because I don't know, there's just some very unique sounds on these records. So to hear those versions of some kind of more mainstream hits, I always get a kick out of. And this one is Claude Danjean and Synthesizer, and it's called Open Circuit. And this one I ordered online. This says, I can see clearly now, Duck You Sucker from the Morricone movie, like a soundtrack that Morricone did. Big Yellow Taxi by Joni Mitchell, theme from The Godfather, Let's Stay Together, Honky Cat, Kiss This, Love Story, and Tightrope, amongst others. Oh, wait, actually, no, there's a sticker on it. This was local as well. $5.50 at Into the Music, my good friends at Into the Music. Really, really great. Give these kind of things a chance. If you ever go record hunting and you find yourself a Moog Synthesizer album, go for it. Just give it a shot. You'll get something out of it, especially if the price is right. So the other thing that I've discovered lately is there's a guy, Andy Ortman, and he played in Panicsville amongst other acts, kind of electronic and experimental and noise acts. I discovered not too long ago that he has a radio show on WFMU in the States, and they have an archive of all of his shows going back to, I think the first one was 2004 or something like that. And he has played, as I'm going through those shows, I'm making notes of tracks that really stand out. He's had some incredible stuff on his show. And one of the ones that jumped out at me is a guy named John Wiggins. He does not quite Foley, but he does sound design for movies and TV and commercials. So kind of creates the sound environment that these movies live in. But when he's creating this stuff, he has a couple of albums where he's kind of collected sounds over the course of years. Yeah, so for example, a track on here called Angenic, it took 14 months to produce as he was collecting all the different sounds and then kind of splicing them together. And again, stuff like this is from 1984, 1985. This one actually, the music on here, the pieces on here, he created on a computer program that he designed himself as well. And it's an amazing, amazing album. Anagenic is a great tune, but Particle Music is the one on here that is phenomenal. Really, really great. Kind of in this world of, if the term electroacoustic music means anything to you, this is kind of along those lines. And I love the old computer font right up on the back where he kind of describes the music. A lot of the stuff that he did, he hasn't released a lot of stuff. The few things that he has, though, he released himself. This one was from a record label called RR Records. The theme from Hilarious House of Frankenstein was off a Moog album. Oh, that's amazing. Do you know, do you happen to know which album it was off of? I would love to find that one, actually. That would be a lot of fun. Yeah, so phenomenal guy, really amazing music, fantastic record, such a fantastic record. This is a good one to kind of go with what you're saying, Hilarious House of Frankenstein. Another one that I found locally that blew my mind, actually, when I played it. They have some turntables there, so you can kind of, if it's not sealed, you can listen to them on their turntables just to get a sample of what you're going to buy. I don't usually go for this kind of thing, like these sound effects type of things, but this one is amazing. It's so amazing from Pickwick, and it's sounds to make you shiver. And just look at that frickin' cover. Like, that cover is outstanding. I ended up playing a track of this as well on the radio show. I think I played Phantom Piano from side 2. So there's the back cover to that one. And then even the record hub itself is just real badass. Really, really great stuff. There's some amazing stuff on here. The first side of the album, I think, is all might just be one piece. Yeah, side one is A Night in a Haunted House. So basically, you know, you're supposed to play this on your turntable on Halloween as the kids are coming trick or treating. Put your speakers in the windows. I may do that this year actually with this album. We usually try to do up our house. We have some lighting that we do that kind of projects onto the front door, and we have a whole bunch of spider webs, and I usually wrap the rails, the banisters rather, with like twigs, and we put kind of spiders and all sorts of stuff in it. So I might actually have this and ghosts and things hanging in the trees. I might play this year to kind of add something for the kids in the neighborhood. Really, really great album. If you see this, again, don't hesitate. The song was called March of the Martians. Can't recall the artist. Awesome. I'll have a dig for that. What else do we got here? There's a couple of guys who have produced music over the years that I've kind of grown up with. Kevin Martin, Justin Broderick, and Mick Harris are three guys that, as my kind of musical taste changed throughout the years, every time I came across these guys again, they were doing something that really resonated with me and was kind of entering territory that I was really getting interest in as well. Mick Harris and Justin Broderick played on the first Napalm Death album called Scum. Mick Harris played drums. Justin Broderick was a guitarist. I think they were both kind of 16, 17, 18 years old, right in around there. So they went from kind of this extreme music. Justin Broderick eventually formed the band Godflesh, and then did a bunch of other things. I think he was doing some kind of like power electronics type of albums to some kind of like pretty harsh kind of noise stuff. Eventually, both of them went off to produce electronic music. Kevin Martin was kind of in the same boat. He was more kind of free, jazzy, mixed with kind of rock with a band called God. But eventually he went on to become the Bug and produce kind of dance hall style electronic music that's phenomenal. All three of those guys were really experimenting with bass and how to get a really great bass frequency to really, you know, rattle the dishes off your wall kind of thing. So that resonated with me as well too, because I've always loved that. So before kind of dubstep and all these kind of genres were a thing, these guys were producing music well before their time. Justin Broderick ended up having a record label called, it wasn't called Possible, Low Fiber, and Mick Harris had a label called Possible Records, and I've got a few albums on Possible Records as well as a 2 CD compilation, but this popped up again on Discogs. Turns out the guy lived in Winnipeg. An excellent album from one of the acts that was on his label called Sim, with an album called Welcome, and this is kind of like a pre-release, so it's just a white label with just a little letter in the front explaining what it is and a little bit of a bio of Eraldo Bernocchi is the guy who is Sim. The label on it from whoever was selling it when he first bought it says it's kind of trip hop, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I guess that's the closest thing that you could come up with. So that's just a double LP, just a white label of a phenomenal album. Really, really good. It kind of does straddle the line of electronic music and hip hop, though, so I can see maybe why they call it hip hop or trip hop rather. So with Justin Broderick and Kevin Martin, they ended up performing together in a couple of different electronic outfits: Techno Animal, Ice, Zonal, the Sidewinder, and a couple of other ones. Those are the ones that are popping into my head. So in my kind of completionist mindset, with some of this money that I've been making off of records online, I kind of splurged and bought a stack of stuff from them, from their back catalog, that I didn't have before. This is Ice Meets the Underdog, Bad Blood Transfusion, with a guest vocal from LP, who is now in Run the Jewels with Killer Mike. So this is some early LP work. LP also had a record label called Def Jux, where he did a bunch of solo albums well before he met up with Killer Mike. This is a good one, actually. Even the remix is a pretty good track. Also from that dynamic duo, they got into a little bit of drum and bass. I think this one might have just been Justin Broderick. I can't remember. An act called Eraser, and there's just 2 tracks. The only 2 tracks. Yellow Still Cranks My Gears, absolutely, yeah. The only 2 tracks that were produced under the name Eraser, and they're definitely more drum and bass. Overdrive and Overdose. Not much really to show you there, just the label itself. But again, like the beauty of some of these, and it's kind of the beauty of the internet, right? It's the good and bad, right? You can find pretty much anything you're looking for. The bad side is you can find anything you're looking for. So there's always multiple excuses to, well, I'll just get this one album. Well, I'll just get this one. But I love it though, for stuff like this, stuff that I can't find. Most of this stuff was pressed in the UK, and not as easy to find in North America. So that's where all of these came from. I had to order them from the UK. But the thing is, there's still people that have the records over there. So it is fairly easy to get your hands on this stuff. Just a Techno Animal. They released a number of just 12 inches that they eventually collected onto a CD. This one has the Myth Illogical, Fist Funk, which is a great, great track. Toxicity and Needle. So this is Techno Animal Phobic. I think I'm just missing one Techno Animal 12-inch, and I've got them all now. So then Kevin Martin eventually becomes the Bug, and he starts working with Jamaican vocalists and grime vocalists, and produces. He put out this album, London Zoo, that he worked on for years, and when he was working on it, once he had finished it, he got super depressed because he's like, I've spent all this time working on this. I've just created something that's unlistenable. Nobody is going to want to hear this shit. What the hell am I thinking? What am I doing? The album kind of drops, and people just ate it up, and they went absolutely fucking berserk for some of the stuff he was doing. Because that was really his. Techno Animal had worked with some vocalists, and same with Ice, as I was talking about earlier. But this style that he was doing as the Bug was quite a bit different from Techno Animal. It was hardcore, kind of dance hall, really stripped down electronic music with some ridiculously good vocalists and some ridiculously good instrumental tracks. And he's kind of found his own, because now he puts out albums and they sell out. You got to pre-order stuff. They sell out. He does really, really well. He tours all over the world. So this is one called Iceman, and on the flip side is Box. So featuring DEE, and this one is featuring Rico Dan. I don't remember if this is a colored one. No, it's not. Just a black vinyl. But he's working with some new artists. He used to do all the art and design and layout himself, but now he's working with artists, and he's really kind of found his style. This one is called Zim Zim Zim, featuring Burro Banton. I don't know how well you're going to see this. Oh, yeah, there you go. You can see it. It's kind of like clear ink printed on a red jacket. Just a single again, but this one has the bonus of being beautiful red vinyl. And on the flip side, again, we have there we go. You can sort of see that. Yeah, an etching on the flip side. The same picture that appears on the front of the album. I don't know how well you can see that, but you get the idea. Really nice packaging, really nice stuff. And the music, again, the music for the most part just completely blows my mind. I love his stuff so much. And then finally, he's been working with a Iranian vocalist named Miss Red. And she just put out her first album. She had a mixtape that you can find on YouTube, and I think it was called Fever, I believe. So she just put out this album KO. So I pre-ordered this. It came out a few weeks ago. Not my and Kevin Martin produces all the tracks. It's not horrible, but it's not somewhere that I'd steer people to first. Yeah, Skang is an unbelievable tune. Scott, Skang is unreal, and that's a good story on Skang, because when he produced that song, it was a very last second. He had these vocalists in the studio putting vocals down for other tracks, and as they were leaving, he played this rhythm for them, and one of the guys, I think it was Flo Dan, really liked it, and Rico Dan didn't like it, and he was ready to just leave, but he kind of convinced them to just put down some vocals to it, just throw something down, and literally it was like a one take. They lay these vocals down, and he had this track that he really dug. He wasn't sure if anybody else would like it, so at that time in his career, he had a lot of, oh, Joan and Jello, how are you? He had a lot of friends who were producers. This guy called Code 9, Mala, Lofa, guys that were playing out live, like DJing live. So he kind of gave them the track. And he said that he would get texts in the middle of the night from a friend of his going, I just played Skang, and the building just erupted. People are eating it up, and he had no idea that it was going to be as big as it was. And it became a huge tune for him. So that's interesting that you bring up that one specifically. So this one to me is a little thin. The production is a little thin. She doesn't have the strongest vocal style. Her style is great. It's just, I mean to say, she doesn't have the strongest voice. So because of that, he stripped down the music even more so, and kind of lightened up the music more so, just to kind of make sure that he didn't bury her vocals completely. But in doing so, it kind of created a pretty thin sounding album. There's still some really great tracks on here. War is pretty good. Shock Out is pretty great. But overall, if I was steering anybody towards Kevin Martin, I don't think I'd push them right to this one right away. I'd push them to something like the London Zoo album or Pressure. And earlier when I was talking London Zoo wasn't first. Pressure, I believe, was the first one, and it was Pressure that he worked on for a couple of years and thought that he made something that was unlistenable, that nobody was going to like. London Zoo was his it was his actual third album as The Bug, but it was the second one with his new kind of style. The first Bug album, he did a fake soundtrack to Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation. So that it's kind of like this made up soundtrack that actually works pretty well with the movie. Watching sections of the movie, I love Coppola's The Conversation. Coppola wasn't a slouch as a director, but The Conversation to me is an unbelievably good film. One, and it's also one I think that was really close to Coppola's heart as well. I think he tried to get it made for a few years, and I might be wrong about this. Scott may know the answer to this one, but I think it came out shortly after Godfather Part 1, and it was the one that he wanted to do more so than Godfather. I believe there's a story that goes that he was ready to pass on The Godfather because he wanted to do The Conversation. I don't know how true that is, but I might be remembering that wrong. And at that point, I mean, oh man, you got to see The Conversation. It's just amazing. Really, really incredible, claustrophobic, filled with paranoia, and an amazing performance by everybody in it. It's just an incredible, incredible movie about a guy who spies on people for a living. And at that time, it was all audio recording. So he had kind of a small team of people that worked with him, and they would get jobs to spy on people, and through one of these jobs, he thinks that he overhears a murder plot. Hello. He thinks he overhears a murder plot and kind of has some. Okay, I'll be right there. He has a little bit of a hard time knowing what he should do with this information that he found, because now it's starting to look like it's on a bigger scale. Phenomenal movie, Scott. If you get a chance to see it, I highly recommend checking it out. With that, the family's home. Thank you very much for tuning in. And thanks very much for everybody who showed up. And we'll talk to y'all later. Take it easy. Okay, come on down, Lillian.